So the people who run Mitch McConnell, let's be honest, he is just as far gone as figurehead Biden. Have him out pimping for Kamala, passive-aggressively. Mitch is good at that, man. Good at the passive-aggressive stuff. And that's the sign of a healthy mind, isn't it? And a healthy emotional state, spiritual state. And President Trump messed with this retired general money train. And I almost said, dude. Wait, when do I say dude? That's the first time I've ever said that on the show. How did that infect me this morning? Sorry for saying dude, but dude, if you've not seen the retired general money train, oh, it's delicious. We'll talk about this as, well, trash. Because, we're garbage, right? Yep, they did it again. We'll talk about this with the help of our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@the-Todd-Herman-Show, and with mass signs from Bioptimizers. But we can't do any of this apart from the vine. Thank you, Lord God.
The Todd Herman Show is 100% disapproved by big pharma, technocrats, and tyrants everywhere. Now, from the high mountains of free America, here's the Emerald City exile, Todd Herman.
Today is the day the Lord has made, and these are the times to which God has decided we shall live. A quick note here, since it's next to the bumper music. Jeremy Bartman writes, Todd, I missed the old opening music that sounded similar to Money for Nothing. No, it didn't. No, don't say that. Please don't say that. No, gosh, no. There was no similarity to my old bumper music from morning radio. That was not the case. My teenage boys even thought it was a badass backdrop for the Emerald City Exile intro. I realized there may be a business reason for doing this. I missed the opening so much that I had to get my old playlist out, listening to your show to get in my fix for that awesome guitar. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I will remind myself to send you a copy of that intro that you can have for your very own self. And if you just write back to me and tell me the name of your teenage sons, I will, in fact, do a little opening for them. I'll just provide that for you. Thank you for being part of the family. So the October surprise is in. They're going after Ben Shapiro and a bunch of conservative commentators for spreading election conspiracy theories and and misinformation. This is the New York Times using Media Matters, which is a hard left communist group that exists to try to destroy conservative media. They're one of many groups that David Brock started. David Brock used to be a conservative, and then I think he got spiritually captured in a very, very big way. So they sent Shapiro this text, and, oh, you shared this disinformation. Now, let's just be honest about something about Ben Shapiro. He's a great debater, one of the best debaters who's ever lived. He's fantastically successful. He has a huge footprint. He helped build the Daily Wire into a massive conservative juggernaut. And Ben Shapiro is not a brave commentator to any way, shape, matter, idea, faction, or form. Not in the least. Ben was about 6 years late to the sexual and chemical mutilation of children. And there's no excuse for that. I spoke about this many, many times on the Rush Limbaugh program, many times. Interviewed experts on this, the most cited and admired at one time pediatrician in all of Australia came on that program with me and talked about what it was doing to kids. It was the decision to not discuss it because it was, well, touchy. And when it became evident that it was okay, Ben leapt in and has brought a lot of attention to it. There's also this, of course, he insisted that a certain procedure, which we talk a lot about on the Substack channel, a lot about this because there's still breaking news in relation to this procedure and the condition that caused the procedure. Ben was, for 3 years after it became clear it wasn't true, saying safe and effective. And again, he's done a lot for the movement. So I'm sure he could criticize me, starting with, oh, I remember him. I met him once. Aside from that, don't know who he is. He could do that. So they're going after Shapiro for spreading election disinformation. Reminder that Ben Shapiro determined somehow, I don't know how, that Joe Biden won in 2020. Using, I guess, the fantastic election system we have where we check voter ID, where ballots aren't counted if they arrive too late. where you can't just drop 200 ballots in a drop box at once, where 5 states didn't stop or didn't pretend to have stopped counting at 4:30 in the morning. At the same time, with the same result, the hockey stick for Biden. So somehow Ben determined that Joe Biden won fair and square. It might be the same way that Ben determined that a certain procedure was safe and effective, because it's safe to say it. And there's a cost. There is a definite cost when you decide to speak things before other people speak them. It's called being it's called in business being the bleeding edge versus the cutting edge. So to be the bleeding edge is to move first. To be the cutting edge is just right behind the bleeding edge. And I get it. I saw President Trump when he ran for office in 2016 come down the escalator in Trump Towers and stand there. And I knew one of his tactics was going to be immigration, because I'd been asked at some point to go meet with him and maybe consider joining the campaign. I think that was in 2012. And when he said, we're going to build a wall, it's going to be the most beautiful wall ever seen, I knew in my heart that man is the Republican nominee. I knew it at the moment. But I was afraid of Michael Medved and a guy named Dave Bose, both very smart men. Michael, so kind to me. So kind. It brought me into his home, etc. Considered the man a very, very, very dear man. David Bose, a very smart, brilliant former talk show host out of Seattle, now works at a think tank. Unbelievably brilliant guys. They were wrong on Trump. But I was a new guy in talk radio at that point, having come back into it, and I didn't want to say it because I was afraid. I was afraid of being wrong, and I was afraid of setting a tone in the room that, okay, so this guy just doesn't get it. It was foolish. It was cowardly. And God does not give us a spirit of fear, but of bravery. I should have spoken up. And so I can understand building a career carefully, but not these days. Not during times such as these. I think the only thing we should be careful about during times such as these is making sure that we are doing everything we can to abide with God. And trust me, sometimes that sucks. Sorry, Father. Sometimes it's very hard to be abiding. And yet we're called to do that. You saw the figurehead, or you heard his comment. You got to see what the Politico did to try to cleanse this. To try to change what Biden said about people like you and me, people who are going to support President Trump or are supporting him. Okay, you got to see this, because the details of what the Politico did in print says everything about why Jeff Bezos wouldn't let the Washington Post endorse a presidential candidate, because Bezos is starting to get it. That this money he spent to acquire the Washington Post is going to be utterly wasted if they will not come around to understanding we see the details. We see the nasty details of not just bias, but election rigging via the media. And details matter so much. I have a shoulder surgeon I've used twice. And when he found out I was going to go to Mexico with Renew Healthcare, he said, look, why are you doing this? I said, Roger, it's in the details. It's in the details. Because he'd said to me, hey, Todd, look, during surgery, I'm going to take stem cells out of your bone marrow, and I'm going to put it right in the wound, right where I cut into you, right where the sutures are. It's going to help the sutures heal. It's going to, reduce inflammation. So why are you spending the money to go to Mexico? I said, look, Roger, you're putting into my arms 60,000 of these stem cells that come from my bone marrow. They make bone marrow. That's what they do. Yes, they have anti-inflammatory properties, but that's not what I'm seeking. The Wharton's jelly stem cells taken from placentas and umbilical cords solely, never anything to do with abortion, they destroy inflammation, but they can also build whatever they're assigned to build. If they're put into an ankle joint socket, they build ankle. If it's MCL, ACL, that's what they build. because they don't yet have a role assigned to them. And in my case, in my shoulder, they put in 42 million of these, 12 million in my ankle. Details matter. And sometimes the big picture matters more than the details. You might be being told that you need to have your 5th surgery or something. You know that just destroys body integrity every time. Please do what my friend Bill and his wife just did, and my dear friend Bill and his wife. They went to renew.healthcare. It's RENUE.healthcare, and see if they can help you. They'll tell you if they can. They'll even tell you the percentage chance of success. It's renew.healthcare. So the Politico says, this is what Joe Biden said. This is according to the Politico. Biden, in a Zoom call with the organization Voto Latino, said, quote, the only garbage, end quote, was the, quote, hatred, end quote, of Trump supporters who said such things about American citizens. And this is they're trying to make hay from what happened at Madison Square Garden, where a Puerto Rican comedian issued some unglowing assessments of the island of Puerto Rico. We played earlier this week a Puerto Rican woman responding to this, saying in Puerto Rican culture, we trash each other. I didn't say it's a healthy culture. I don't know one way or the other. I just know this Puerto Rican woman said this is part of our culture. And that the comedian was talking about the island, not the people. And this has made it all the way down into local news. I was listening this morning. I've taken to, when I drive in, I listen to a local television station on the radio. And I was availed of the information that Puerto Ricans were criticized at the Trump rally, given hate speech and such at the Trump rally. I learned that this morning. And certainly that's KXLY lying. So here's what Biden actually said. Again, the Politico. In a Zoom call, Biden in a Zoom call, responding to the statement that Puerto Rico is an island of garbage, Biden in a Zoom call with the organization Voto Latino said, quote, the only garbage, end quote, was the, quote, hatred, end quote, of Trump supporters who said such things about American citizens. No one said Puerto Ricans are garbage. No one. Listen here to what Biden actually said.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable.
Okay, we're going to re-up this. We're going to re-up this, Alex. Alex is producing the program to be the new producer as Nana rolls into a new career. God bless her and God be with her. She's here, but she's now weaning Alex of her presence. So if you're watching the video version of this, cue in on these really horribly dark eyes. And I understand this can be a side effect of Parkinson's, which is not funny, or a side effect of the meds. It could also be that he's reptilian and evil. So choose, or it could be both, I guess, couldn't it? But zoom in on his eyes as he's making the statement, because it's about to get worse. Let's play this one more time.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable.
He's reading that. That was written. Want to see it again? Let's re-up it one more time. And I'm sorry if you're listening to this. I'll just describe what we're seeing. His eyes are going left to right. His dead reptilian eyes are going left to right. This man is reading this.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable.
That's a written statement. And the Politico leaps in to clean it up, knowing that you and I can consult the video evidence. The libs of TikTok did it. Other people did it. So they memory hole what the man actually said. And watch it yourself. He's reading that. So Jeff Bezos has this big problem at the Washington Post, and Bezos has said that the American people do not trust the media. It's getting down to about 13%. They trust the media less than they trust the Congress. I can't recall if it's today or tomorrow. We're going to do a quick, short video on how they could fix this if they wanted to. how they could actually address this and some radical steps they could take. Here's one of them. Relocate your editorial team all around the country. Make them live in America. Don't let them live in Washington, D.C. anymore. Make them live in America. If you're going to write about a place, how about if you live there? I'd once started, and one day maybe I'll finish, a book called Tech Nomads, and it was about a group of technology people who went out to an Indian reservation based upon the Rosebud Reservation to try to help, and ended up finding out, look, you don't know anything about what's going on here. So I think it's a good book. I just can't get the middle written. I couldn't do that without going there. I couldn't begin to pretend to know what it's like, and going there just begins it. If I was actually going to finish that book, I go spend a month there and volunteer there so I could actually know something about that which I'm writing. Living in Washington, D.C. is not living in America. The business model is different. If you want more money, you take it. It's a recession-free environment. It's a flat, godless environment. That's why I used to play that game, wife, girlfriend, or daughter, when we go out to events, and powerful political people, lobbyists would walk in, and we'd place bets: wife, daughter, or girlfriend. Sometimes they were two of the three. Sometimes it's a different town, different set of morals. So Joe Rogan, he's a comedian, right? And he's a fighter, and I guess he's very good at MMA, and man, he's in great shape. A lot of money to be in great shape. He did something that no one in the Mockingbird media was able to do somehow at the very beginning, and he said it to Trump's face about why he got the attention that he did. And Joe Rogan nailed this. And it means that he understands what a lot of people see in Trump, and he understands this despite, and this is not despite the fact. That's why I think YouTube continues to this moment to bury this interview. It could well have 100 million views if they let their algorithm do what the algorithm does. It's the most popular video on YouTube, and still to this moment, YouTube is not surfacing it for others. I should probably shut my hole, because here we are on YouTube, and this get me the second strike. Their platform, their rules, their good dog, Todd, good dog. This is why we have the Substack platform, for us to be able to speak about these things very honestly. Substack has a different business model. And business drives so much of our life. It just does. We don't have to like it, but it does. And business is going to change no matter what happens after this election. And frankly, from where I sit, if Kamala Harris either wins, which I consider unlikely, or is installed, which I consider more likely, then you're going to see a full-on, complete shift right back to DEI, right back to American companies saying, okay, make people buy our products. You're going to see a full force push to limit family farms, to destroy our access to organic, non-mRNA foods. You're going to see a push to make sure that you have to rebuild your house so that you do not have natural gas. We have natural gas in our house for cooking. We love it. And they'll provide a government subsidy, don't worry, just like they did with Obamacare for certain people. I mean, you can probably afford it, so you'll have to spend the $5,000 to $45,000 to have your house stripped of natural gas and a new stove brought in and new appliances. Watch. On the other hand, if President Trump wins, because he's not going to be installed, he'll have to win in a major way, which means we should pray over our ballots, then a whole different set of events takes place, which is, I think, a much healthier set of events for this country. My friend Zach Abraham knows more about this than me, the economic part. He's giving one of his free live webinars. It will be the first one post the election. And Zach's going to talk about how this is going to affect the economy as he sees it. He's not a soothsayer. He can't read into the future and tell you what's going to happen, but he can tell you the patterns of what he thinks is going to occur. So this is a free live webinar. And it's coming up Thursday, November 21st at 3:30 Pacific. And he'll talk about how Bulwark Capital Management's risk management strategy is going to be focused, given who's in the White House, and how they'll do that through active management of every single portfolio, which can, in fact, reduce risk and volatility. So you can join for free. He'll answer questions, and you can watch this all for free. but you have to register. Go to knowyourriskradio.com. That's KNOW, knowyourriskradio.com. And you'll get the details.
Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate, and actual performance may differ. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Trek 24308.
So Joe Rogan's in the business of podcasting. He's incredibly successful. The number one podcast. He's definitely the Rush Limbaugh podcasting in terms of size. I don't know that anything will ever approach his level of success. Congratulations to him. Here he is discussing why President Trump got the attention that he got, and he's doing this with the president in the room.
Exactly why. Maybe you can tell me why.
Oh, I could definitely tell you. You said a lot of wild
Maybe. Maybe
You said a lot of wild and then CNN, in all their brilliance, by highlighting your wild made you much more popular.
Yeah.
And they boosted you in the polls because people were tired of someone talking in this pre-prepared politician lingo. And even if they didn't agree with you, they at least knew whoever that guy is, that's him. That's really him.
Yeah, and there's a genuineness to this. And speaking of this came off the day after the rally, or was it that he did the rally? I can't recall. Did he do the rally and then go on Rogan, or Rogan and then the rally? It's one of the two. I think it was Rogan and then the rally. So 3-hour conversation with Joe Rogan, then the rally. Jason writes in the live chat discussion group, amazing how Jews are safer in Trump Nazi rallies than on liberal arts colleges. Good point. And interesting also that at Trump rallies, it's okay to say, or at least J.D. Vance rallies, it's okay to say Jesus is Lord. Jason also says, my dad has advanced Parkinson's. Joe showed signs of PD years ago. John Caldwell, Ron Burgundy, he'll read whatever's put on the prompter. Right, that's exactly Kamala Harris. So Rogan said on Twitter that Kamala Harris has not declined the opportunity to be on his program. She just has a set of rules. So for the number one podcast in the world, number one in America, number one at reaching young men, and they've been desperate to try to get men to vote for her, they've issued the following rules. He has to fly to her. You know how Jimmy Kimmel does that, and Howard Stern and The View, they all pop on a plane together to go follow Kamala around the country. You know how local news anchors do that? They don't. When Kamala's in town, they handpick a newscaster and she sits with them, and it's always disastrous. So for a local newscaster to get a sit down with her for 15 minutes, they'll do that while she's in town. They're trying to turn Texas blue. Her presence there, one would assume, could pull that off. Austin is a very liberal city. It is a cancer on Texas. It baffles me as to why Rogan lives there. And it needs to be an hour in length. Joe Rogan's podcast does not have time limits. Makes it tough. He could say, hey, Trump did 3 hours, you do 3 hours. But she doesn't want to do this. And remember this. When Kamala Harris sat down for an interview on Fox, they'd agreed, I think, to 40 minutes. She showed up 20 minutes late. So the time was cut to 20 minutes, and that made it look like the Fox host, Brett Barr, was being rude. And that was the design. So what they're trying to do here is to show that Joe Rogan is just, he's implacable. He's difficult. And I watched Keith, what's his name? Ober. Hold on. He was that guy. He had the MSNBC show. Then he did sports, and then he went crazy. And then he now from the Olbermann. Keith Olbermann came along and said something akin to, actually, you're just a lazy, entitled nobody. To Joe Rogan. Got it. Elon Musk has said something about business, and it goes back to the Ben Shapiro commentary. And please understand something. I have absolutely no animus towards Ben whatsoever at all. I've met him all of twice. He was weird, but polite and curious. He was polite. I don't think he liked big people walking up to him in a studio, and I don't blame him. But he was polite. I have nothing against him. I just do not like the posing as brave commentator when you're 6 to 8 months behind important issues. And I think he's now 4 years behind an important issue in terms of election integrity. He's talking about election integrity. He's criticizing the system now. One could say the same thing for Elon Musk. Elon had to know, because he lives in tech circles and lives in tech-heavy cities, he had to know things were a mess. He had to watch what went on in Los Angeles during the installation of the decision to let people steal up to $999 of stuff in a moment in a store. I brought that up, by the way, the other night in the meeting with the youth. And I brought up, look, God says don't steal, and look at these laws that say you can steal as long as it's below $999. It was funny. One of the boys said, wait, so I could go do that? I could go steal iPhones and iPads, and as long as it's $999, I don't get in trouble? Can I steal data plans? I don't think you can steal the data plans, but yeah, you can go steal the hardware, and you probably won't get in trouble. Well, except God. And so a couple of the boys, being, middle school boys, said, that's cool. I said, right. So, and it's going to be really cool when they say you can do it in houses. What? When someone can come and steal $999 of your stuff. Both boys went, oh, they could do that? Sure. Sure, it's people's private property to store or in organizations. They just said, yeah, steal $999. They could do that in your home. It's not even burglary unless it's $1,000. So you could go home and find $999 worth of your stuff gone, and the guy standing in the front, in your front yard with it. They give it back. Nah, I choose not to. So Elon Musk had to know the madness of California on this topic, on the lockdown policies, on the masking policies. But he's waited a long time to speak out, despite the fact that he has enough money, a lot of it courtesy of us, taxpayers, to be somewhat difficult to hurt. Oh, they're trying. And I praise God he's speaking out now. But Elon Musk is now talking to his fellow business people.
I've talked to a lot of people, like leaders in business and technology, because I was like, guys, you should really, you need to go out there and fight hard, because, if America falls, your company's going to fall with it. I wish more leaders in business and technology would put themselves out there. They usually agree with me and they support Trump, but they're afraid of saying so. And I'm like, man, the stakes are super high. Fortunately, more and more people are sort of, coming out of the closet, type of thing. It's like, so like saying this support Trump, it's like, it's like, maybe it's probably the most rebellious thing you could do in San Francisco, but it's like, by a long shot.
The time is now for all of us. And people with influence in particular. I confessed that I gave into cowardice to not come out and say on radio, Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee. I gave into that cowardice, and I apologize for it. And since then, there's been a cost to pay. I mean, one of the things was leaving local radio because I was told I couldn't say the election was stolen. That was the linchpin moment. The other was not being considered for certain national radio gigs because of what I say about pharma. And just too dangerous, could cut into revenue. And look, no animus. Their platforms, their company, their rules, nothing disparaging to say. It's just a reality. But look at the reward. So 2 national radio shows is one thing, but you guys is another. I can't tell you how meaningful it is to me to know that so many of you have been with us so long. And this is a time where we need to tell people we choose sources because they're willing to be the cutting edge. And sometimes you're going to get things wrong when you're the cutting edge. And you need to be very careful to say, look, I don't have proof for this. For instance, I don't have proof that the media companies are using commercially available off-the-shelf software to target certain people with liberal content all day long. I believe it's happening. I can paint out the patterns. Here's how you would do it. knowing that I can identify how you would do it, means to me other people have identified how you would do it, then the bridge you have to cross is, yeah, but they wouldn't do that. They would never take someone like a Bobby De Niro or someone like a Beyonce and just make sure that wherever Beyonce goes, anytime she gets news, there's something in there to convince her that America's a racist country, to convince her that Donald Trump is a literal Nazi. That all you'd need to do is use available off-the-shelf ad tech software and targeting software, and you could make that a reality in her life. So when I say things like that, I'm careful to come out and say, I don't have proof for this, but this is how you would do it. The Politico, again, this is from their Politico Live updates poll page. Brackton Booker, new poll, Trump is getting record levels of support among young black and Latino men. And for some reason, they have capitalized black, even though black is not a race. Latino, I guess you could say it is. Black is not, but, why quibble on accuracy? A new poll that includes large level samples of young voters of color shows Donald Trump has massively increased his support among groups that he previously performed poorly with in 2020. It underscores some of the challenges Kamala Harris has connecting with younger male voters, a demographic that typically breaks for Democrats, but is showing signs of shifting away from the party this election cycle. Hey, you know what she could do? She could go on the Joe Rogan show. The Joe Rogan Experience. And reach 39, 40, 50 million young men. Or not. I wonder why she's saying not. The Gen Forward survey, which ran from September 26 to October 6 by the University of Chicago and included 2,359 eligible voters 18 to 40 years old, including some fascinating findings. A quarter of young black men are supporting Trump. Black men overall backed President Joe Biden nearly 9-1 in 2020. 44% of young Latino men said they'd back Trump, an improvement over roughly 38% who backed him in 2020. For her part, Harris is at 58% with black men, 37% with Latinos, and 57% with Asian Americans and Pacific Islander men. Kamala Harris is doing incredibly well among women of color. A majority, 63%, support her. And white women are evenly split between Harris and Trump. That's actually good news for President Trump. Black women, of course, are being told that they're going to be exterminated and forced to be breeders. Oh, they're also, did you hear this? A liberal commentator has announced that President Trump intends to break up interracial marriages and make the men marry in their so-called race. This is apparently part of Project, 2025? Utterly made up. But if you're a black woman, I could see how that would frighten you. So thank goodness we've got Mitch McConnell. Thank goodness we've got the rock-ribbed, brave, bleeding edge Mitch McConnell. We'll talk about this in a second. Because, man, he's bringing a fresh look at this. He's going to cleanse this country of MAGA. Watch this. Ready? See? That's how it's done. Just like Allen soaps can cleanse your body of all the dirt and sweat that you get during the day. But as you do this, you have peace of mind that you're using a soap that is much bigger than the product. And the product is world class. It's made in America. It's made by a family of 3 generations of soap making expertise. And it is absolutely all natural. And it employs people, the company does, that the rest of the party would rather see aborted. Well, they can't abort them now, but they could store them in institutions, which is what they prefer, rather than having them live and thrive. 3 young people like this. Go to allensoaps.com/Todd. Get 10% off all their products there. And yeah, I'm going to tell you, I know it's just Halloween. I know. But as you're getting ready for Thanksgiving, think about this in your home as a conversation starter. And if you're starting to think even a little bit about Christmas gifts or other gifts, go to allensoaps.com/Todd. CNN Politics, Mitch McConnell says MAGA movement is completely wrong. Ronald Reagan wouldn't recognize the movement with President Trump. Senator? I'm sorry, press 1 minute. Senator? Senator. Okay, press. Senator, remember that terrible moment? So someone, maybe Mitch McConnell thinks MAGA movement is completely wrong and Reagan wouldn't recognize Trump's GOP. Indeed. When was Ronald Reagan president again? Great man, the president of my youth, mistakes. He made huge mistakes on immigration. Huge. And what was going on back then? Not this. Not an attack on family farms, not an attack on actual body autonomy, that is our bodies. Not the funding of both sides of a war that is biblical in scope between Hamas and Israel. Not the massive and obvious money laundering through Ukraine. Not that. Not the full-fledged naked assault on our voting system. Not that. Not a literal 17-state statement that if you won't lie about your kids' health and their biology, we will steal your kids from you. That wasn't going on. American manufacturing had not been shipped overseas with the great promise that we'll be an information society. I still have a book from Harvard Business School. When I was teaching myself business back in the day, I got this book from Harvard Business School, and it's so applauded. The transfer from being an agrarian society to a manufacturing society to light manufacturing and then to an information society, baby, all about the laptop class that needs hardware. Laptops are hardware. People and machines make these, and people have to make the machines. Soon, you'll have machines that make machines and code that writes code. And then what? Now we're not an information society anymore? What are we then? Well, some of us might be on psychotropics and such. As about a third of the country is right now. So, yeah, I think Mitch McConnell and whoever had him say this is right. President Reagan wouldn't recognize things because there's things going on that you can't recognize. Hillary Clinton was asked about what Kamala Harris needs to do to not see a repeat of 2016. Well, she could go on the Joe Rogan experience, since even Politico admits she's having a massive problem with young men. She could do that, but she won't because she's going to employ these ridiculous demands that Joe Rogan can't meet and keep his format. But there's something else Hillary Clinton wants you to know.
What do you think Vice President Harris needs to do, in your view, to avoid a repeat?
Well, first of all, I don't think she has Jim Comey in the wings waiting to kneecap her, so that's good, and I'm very grateful for that. But I think she is doing what she needs to do, and in reporting from today, I think by CNN, a number of the voters who were at your town hall have said she convinced them, that she had shown the kind of empathy and concern about their problems, that she'd come forward with her ideas, her...
No. In fact, I could pull the clip out and ask Alex to load it right now, but I won't do that. She was just on one of those local news tours where she either brings him into a hotel room or much more likely drops into a common studio. They rent a video studio for the day. The great lady stays there, has her great lady food, and the little tiny newscasters come up into their little tiny chairs and they sit at their little tiny station, and then the great lady's brought in, and the newscasters are told, here's the 5 questions or so that you'll ask, and if you go out of the bounds, you'll never get to talk to the great lady again. And often the newscasters stick to the script. Sometimes they don't. God bless them. She was in Michigan, and a local newscaster said, look, we have people who build automobiles here. They're concerned about their jobs. So once again are being sent overseas. They believe that President Trump brought that back here. They can't pay their grocery bills and their rent. They're deeply concerned about their kids having a future. What do you say to Michigan voters? What do you think her response was? No, seriously, what do you think it was? Well, let's remember something, okay? I was raised in a middle-class home. And I have never forgotten being raised by two PhDs in Berkeley. Middle class. Empathy. Oh, incidentally, Hillary Clinton made mention of she won't have Jimmy Comey sitting there kneecapping her. I think we addressed this the other day, the 145 or so national security felonies that woman absolutely committed because Jimmy Comey said, here's the felony she committed. But no reasonable prosecutor would prosecute. At least we've got more election security this year, and we do in some states and in some instances. Fifth Circuit Court has ruled that you can't count ballots if they arrive after the due date. Okay. How about this? In Nevada, mailed ballots without a postmark that arrive 3 days after the election can be counted. Without a postmark. So, in other words, fraudsters could look and see how far behind are we? How many ballots do we need to print or go get and bring in, and we don't check voter ID and we don't check signatures. Mitch McConnell's right. Ronald Reagan, who won 49 states against Walter Mondale, where people had to actually go vote, he wouldn't recognize it. I remember going to Chester Elementary School during that election and watching my mom vote. It was the first place I got to vote in, I believe, 1986. Same school. I do not early vote. I dare not have my votes give Democrats time to figure out how to steal. So we will go, as we always do on Election Day, down to our little tiny election place. I bet it's going to be the same 5 women who do this every year. They're going to check my ID twice. They're going to check my signature twice. And if I'd asked permission a few weeks ago, I could sit there and watch them count the ballots at a firehouse. And funny thing, I have a lot more trust in that system than the all mail-in ballot system. So President Trump, says Joe Rogan, said some wild S word. And that's what set him off to a good start in the presidential election. I think Rogan's right, but I don't think what he said was particularly wild. Not about the wall, not about our intelligence services, not about our generals who, so many no longer win wars, but have a lot more medals than people who won World War II. And he said some wild stuff. During one of his rallies, there was a guy who was heckling him, and President Trump said, "Kick his blank." I like that. We don't need that. So that's wild stuff. But you know what he actually did that was wild? Is he followed the JFK path to confronting the military-industrial complex. And this is not discussed enough. If you talk to people who served our country, and you talk to people who served our country in combat, and you talk to them about what it's like to watch generals leave behind maybe $1 billion of important equipment and intelligence gathering tools in Afghanistan, $700 million. The look on their face when you talk about this says a lot. When they hear generals saying that they'd be willing to go to the Chinese military and warn them of an attack coming at the behest of the nation's commander-in-chief, their face says a lot more. And still though, they stand with America. My friend Tim Cruikshank's this way. You know him from Bone Frog Coffee. Incredible coffee I drink every single day, multiple times in the morning. And now Tim is able to talk about Bone Frog cellars. There's been a supply chain issue. There's been a tech issue. That's all gone, but there's never been a wine issue. My friends who love wine came to our house for a wine tasting and fell in love with the Bone Frog cellars. Particularly surprising was my friend Tom, who loved the Merlot over the Cabernet, and he normally loves Cabernet. And to watch his face as he was thrilled. He was nervous, man. All my friends are nervous. They all know the story of Bone Frog. Most of them listen to and or watch the podcast. Some of them have met Tim. So they had the nervousness of, if this is bad, I got to tell you. One of my friends took me aside and goes, if I don't like this wine, I'm just going to shut my mouth. I said, no, you need to tell me so I can tell Tim. Well, they loved the wine. And yes, I was relieved. I would taste it, but I don't drink wine. I'd be helpless in that regard. And frankly, I don't like wine. I love coffee, but not wine. So you go get some for your holidays, your Thanksgiving. Just trust my friends who love wine and enjoyed it so much. It's bonefrogsellers.com/Todd. Get 10% off all their products there. And yes, of course, 10% of proceeds go to support the Navy SEAL Foundation to care for the families of fallen Navy SEALs. Sean Spicer talking about President Trump saying some wild stuff that got some generals pretty upset.
Question, which is, why are there so many administration officials who hate him, have quit, and are leaking to the press about how bad he was?
Again, as I said, I think some of them just have a personal animus towards him because of how they personally were treated or the advice that they were given. I watched it constantly in the Oval Office. Two people would come in, give him two versions of a policy, and then he would choose one person. The other person would walk out of there and say, fine, I'm going to find people to undermine your argument. I'm going to leak it to the press. People around him have big egos. And when he said, I mean, I watched him bring in a bunch. We were talking about Afghanistan policy one day, and he said, I want 10 enlisted soldiers to come in that have served in Afghanistan. And he sat him around a table and said, tell me about your experience. And it pissed a lot of people off that he wasn't taking the advice of the more senior people and asking the actual enlisted folks, tell me what your experience has been. Did you understand the mission? Are we winning? Are we moving forward? Were you getting the equipment and the tools that you needed? They hated that. They hated the fact that they came in, gave their PowerPoint presentation, and they were being undermined by a guy who didn't just sign off on it with like a blank check. So I think Washington is full of a lot of guys with a lot of big egos that don't like the fact that when they come into a room, everyone doesn't just say, oh, great idea, let's move forward. Some of them didn't like that.
Including in the military.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people. I watched it all the time, and Trump would blow up and say, we're not just doing the same thing over and over again.
That was with Megyn Kelly. Great question. Spot on. Forgot to put these in the Substack notes earlier, so can't put them on the screen, but Proverbs chapter 12, or pardon me, Proverbs 12, verse 15. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice. President Trump saying, let's bring in the enlisted people. Proverbs 11, verse 14. Where there's no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors, there is safety. President Trump widening the group of advisors to include enlisted men. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 22. Without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed. So President Trump acting wisely, almost biblically. But it disrupted the money train. J.P. Morgan hires retired General Mark Milley as senior advisor because he's an expert at monetary policy and banking. No, he's not. He's an expert at building back Ukraine better with a $15 billion fund, including border security. BlackRock and J.P. Morgan are backing a $15 billion investor fund to rebuild Ukraine. It would cost almost $500 billion to reconstruct Ukraine. God bless them for doing that. Just because they love the Ukrainian people. And Mark Milley can step in and help them, steward the monies. A guy who said, sure, I'll commit treason. The commander-in-chief of the U.S. military launches a military attack or says we're going to. I'll get on the phone and call the enemy and say, incoming. The money train. There's ways to stop it, such as divorcing the United States monetary policy from the way of capture. How? By opening every single discussion in Congress to our eyes. Every email goes in the cloud. If you want an exception, state on penalty of a felony and a 30-year prison sentence that this involves sources and methods of an active investigation or a planned military activity. Everything else is ours, stored in the cloud for us to search using keywords. That would clear a lot of things up. Lord, thank you for being the ultimate source of wise counsel through your word and your people. This is the Todd Herman Show. Please go be well, Be strong, be kind, and please make every effort to walk in the light of Christ.